WandaVision is not only the first introduction to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Phase 4, but it is also the first television series to be directly linked to the MCU. We've had other shows before kind of hint that they were part of it, like shows you'd find on ABC, for example, or even Netflix, but now we have a show that's actually made by Kevin Feige and all the people that work for Disney Marvel, instead of just, wanting to work with them. There's no vague references to the Green Guy or the attack on New York. Do you remember those times, though, when that was the biggest thing about, like, Daredevil or Jessica Jones, when they just said vague references to other heroes? My God, what a time that was. Because this show wrapped up about a week and a half ago, I'm going to be talking about certain things that if you didn't know anything about the show prior, if you didn't see anything other than the trailers, would be considered spoilers. But if you've seen the entire show, you obviously know all these things. Or if you haven't watched it, but you've been active on Twitter, you probably know. So, mild spoilers. But through her grief, Wanda Maximoff, played once again by Elizabeth Olsen, creates this town of hers in Westview. She's able to bring back Vision, played by Paul Bettany. And she lives through several different eras of sitcom life with him. Everything seems fine. They're having a good time, but then there's these moments of darkness that creep in. That's like, hey, what's going on here? The people are probably suffering and being held hostage here. There's an organization outside of this town where the hex is placed called SWORD, where these people are trying to get in, save the people, and also try to communicate with Wanda and see what's going on. When I first heard about this show, I wasn't particularly excited for it. I was more into like, yes, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That's probably going to be really great. Wanda and Vision living out sitcom lives? Nah, I don't need to see that. But then once I saw the trailer and I saw what they were ultimately going for, I was like, okay, now I'm actually really excited, and it might be the most excited I am for one of these Marvel shows, either that or Loki. That I wasn't excited for either, but once I saw the trailer and saw the ultimately different vibe they were going with, I was like, I am totally on board. This is hopefully the start of many MCU projects that will dabble more in weird shit. We've seen them kind of hint at it before, but structured inside of a basic Marvel formula type movie, which is basically just they hit certain beats, they do similar things with their humor and action set pieces. Hopefully now this is the start of incorporating some weirdness and interesting storytelling in a lot of stuff that we find conventional, making it feel brand new again, which is what they did with this show, in my opinion. I really enjoyed WandaVision overall. It's really, really fun to watch all the way through because this show is handled with such technical care. Matt Shakman is the director for every single one of these episodes, and each one is really good. They jump around from different styles of sitcom, 50s, 60s, Malcolm in the Middle era, like Modern Family, and then you jump back into like widescreen MCU stuff whenever they cut to SWORD or certain moments inside the Hex. But it's amazing how each one of the sitcom styles that they tackle feel so ripped from each era. Like there's nothing about it that seems modern day except for those moments every once in a while where they creep something in. But even that, it more so feels like a Twilight Zone kind of moment because they usually stick to the style of sitcom they're in. So every time something kind of dark or weird happens, it's still structured like black and white filter, or it's still structured in those camera angles that you'd get on sitcoms. It's very well done. In the earlier stuff, when they're doing the black and white and they had to do like whenever Wanda does magic, they obviously like pause filming and they replace an object and then they resume, or everything's on a string or something like that, and they're doing these wacky gags. It's all really fun to see, and it's another reason why I really enjoy this show, because Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany are obviously really great actors and they've done great jobs playing these characters, but it's not like they've really had a chance to shine in the sense that they've had like a majority of screen time in anything. A lot of times they're playing second fiddle to some of the other guys in their ensemble pieces, but in this they really get a chance to shine, not just to act as these characters, but act as different versions of them in these sitcoms, which is basically just them being wacky or trying to capture that authentic kind of performance and dialect that a lot of those classic actors back in those sitcom days would be using. And they both expertly pull it off. These two are so great together once again, even when it does get serious later on and they have to kind of drop the silly stuff and put on, the makeup and the costumes as these characters and actually act as how they normally would. There's still a lot more driving those performances these times around. Although they're obviously great in their movies, this actually gives them a chance to really shine and put a spotlight on their characters and actually get at you emotionally. Because obviously, Elizabeth Olsen's character, Wanda, we understand that her character has faced some tragedy and some grief before. Like in Age of Ultron, they explain what happened to her and Pietro's parents, and it's like, oh, that's really sad. And then Civil War, you know, this big thing that she does is cause for attention and controversy, and she feels really bad about it. But now, because of this show, because they give her more time to focus on the character, and they also flash back to certain things, and you get to live through certain important events in her life with her, you really do feel how tragic this character is, and you understand the importance of Vision in her life and this new family dynamic that she has created in this new world. Even if the world, if it comes down, these things will go away. That's why she has to keep them, because it's like the only thing she has left, pretty much, she feels like. I'm telling you, once the show starts up, you're having fun with all the things they're doing with the sitcoms, the authentic camera work, and the gags that are so corny that they do feel ripped right out of them. Not every joke works, though. If I'm gonna have a flaw with this, it's that I'm not particularly like a big sitcom fan either. So there's certain jokes that I'm willing to let slide, as certain things that I'm willing to look at and go like, well, yeah, that matches for the era. But there's a couple where you're just kind of like, I can't pretend to be enjoying this gag right now that you're doing. I get that it's a sitcom world, but Jesus, can we move on? But as the show goes on and you see more of the drama kind of infusing itself into the show, you actually get more emotionally engaged with it. Someone pointed this out, and I definitely noticed it when I was reflecting on the episodes, is that each one kind of represents the stages of grief that Wanda ultimately goes through. And that was honestly really impressive to me. Jack Schaefer is the showrunner for this series, and she does a really great job. There's a lot of really great narrative choices that they make. I know a lot of it doesn't live up to people's fan theories, which we'll talk about briefly right now. I don't care about fan theories. I really don't. I know people have fun with them, and even I, to a certain extent, have fun with hearing them. Like, oh, I wonder if that does happen. But if it doesn't, as long as what they do is good, and as long as what they do doesn't, like, contradict something, or it doesn't make sense, or it's, like, dumb, then I'm good with it. And they didn't do that for me. They created something really emotionally engaging, something that struck at the core of not just Wanda, but also Vision's characters, something that made me tear up at the end of it, because they were doing such a good job of reestablishing these characters. Obviously, we've experienced them in other movies before, but this show really does redefine how I viewed these two characters. Vision is also really fun in this. Paul Bettany does a really great job. He's really hamming it up kind of earlier on, obviously, because he's like the Dick Van Dyke kind of in this universe. But as the show goes on, obviously, he's starting to grow a little more suspicious. He's doing things on his own to kind of investigate, and he's doing a really fantastic job. Paul Bettany has a really great scene, too, with himself, the White Vision. They are fighting, and the fight looks great. But then it ultimately comes down to them having a debate in a library discussing, like, their own existence. And it's incredible. I was like, man, even though, yes, it's the last episode and they're getting into the big bonanza MCU fighting, now it's like, it's transitioning into them having a debate philosophically. That's incredible! Even the fight between Agnes and Wanda, even though it starts off as kind of like exactly what you'd expect, it's fun, and visually, you know, that the special effects money they pump into the show is incredible. Obviously, they've been doing that with The Mandalorian too, but with this, it's like, you know, it's good to see. It's good to see that trend continue. But even that fight, as fun as it is, it ultimately transitions into a more clever kind of, hey, gotcha kind of ending. And I was like, yes, this is so cool to see them do that. Obviously, you know, no MCU project. I don't think any MCU project can go without having like a big fight at the end. I think you kind of have to do that. Not because it's formula and it's what it's expected, but it's kind of, like, how could you not in a superhero kind of project? But with this, seeing them do things differently leading up to that, and then even in the fights themselves doing things differently, that's really exciting, and it's really fun. And speaking of Agnes, I mean Agatha Harkness, played by Kathryn Hahn. She is a ton of fun in this. For a while, she's just kind of the nosy neighbor. You're wondering what she's all about, just running around, but she's totally killing it in the sitcom role that she has, pretty much like the nosy neighbor, just coming in all the time, like, hey, Wanda, I'm your best friend, and like just being so loud and over the top, like just overly friendly. And then seeing her transition into the Agatha Harkness role, still having her be really fun, but you see the more sinister intentions behind her. Kathryn Hahn killed it. I thought she did a fantastic job as Agatha Harkness. She and Wanda have some really great back and forth scenes. I know some people weren't a big fan of the other villain in this. That would be Director Hayward of S.W.O.R.D. he starts off as the guy who's just like, I'm in charge of this government organization, sword, and we're monitoring everything. We're just trying to do what's best for the townspeople. But as it goes on, you see that he might have some other intentions, potentially going against Vision's will to create the White Vision, just using his body for power, all that. I know some people weren't particularly a big fan of his, and I can see why, because he doesn't have any powers. He's not like a big over-the-top kind of villain. Even as far as like human villains go, like Alexander Pierce is probably like way better than him. But I didn't really dislike that character's involvement in this, mainly just because, the actor wasn't doing a bad job at all, and also I understood what it was they were trying to do with that, because he kind of mentions like, you didn't have to live through the last 5 years to Monica Rambo at one point, ultimately just kind of showing you like his mindset since then has been like, you don't have to rely on heroes, you kind of have to just get things done by yourself, and if it means violating the Vision's will, then sure, we have to do stuff on our own here. I kind of understood that motivation there, so I was able to let that character ride. Sure, maybe they could have had more scenes of him being a little more obviously villainous, but I don't think that's what the character kind of was. It was kind of supposed to be a surprise at the end when he was willing to shoot Wanda's kids at that one part. Because he's convinced that what he's doing is for the greater good. He's doing right. But ultimately that ideology has warped his mind to instead do bad when he didn't know it. So I was able to let that villain ride. I know a lot of people didn't care for him, but I was fine with it. The kids, Wanda's kids, they're actually really fun. They do a really great job. And so does Evan Peters as Pietro. In the Malcolm in the Middle episode, they really have a chance to shine as far as chemistry goes, him and the boys, but also him and Elizabeth Olsen. Obviously, he's not Aaron Taylor Johnson, and that's the twist people were expecting. Oh, he's going to be the one from the Fox universe, and he's not. He's just a new actor in the MCU playing a different character, Ralph Boner. And I know some people were upset by that. They wanted it to be the Evan Peters from the Fox universe. It's not, but I'm fine with it. I kind of just saw it as like the most creative trolling ever. There's no way that Marvel wasn't like, people are going to theorize after this episode that this is the Quicksilver from Fox. LeMayo, let's not make him that. We're just casting him just for the gag of it all. Honestly, I kind of had to let it ride just for that, but also because Evan Peters he's usually great in everything I see him in. He was really good as this version of Pietro, or Fietro, fake Pietro. Speaking of funny, Darcy Lewis, who I don't particularly find funny in the Thor movies, like she's more digestible in the first Thor movie, but Thor: The Dark World, where they're overplaying her, and she also has like an assistant now who's also trying to tell some jokes. It was like, okay, I think I'm done with Darcy. And when they announced she was coming back for WandaVision, I was like, alright, well, we'll see how it goes. I don't dislike Kat Dennings at all. I just don't really care for how they've treated the character of Darcy, how they've written her, or how they've just, if it's improv, how they've just kind of let Kat Dennings just kind of go off and they just had no filter for it. But in this show, she's much better utilized. She actually has a lot of funny moments in this. She and Jimmy Woo, Randall Park comes back to play him from Ant-Man and the Wasp, who I liked in Ant-Man and the Wasp. So seeing him come back and having a bigger role and taking charge of certain things, while also still having that likable charm to him, that was really fun to see. I thought these two had really great chemistry with each other, as well as their chemistry with Monica Rambo, played by Teyonah Parris. She is excellent as, I don't know if she's going to be Photon or something else, whatever the name is. I know she has a couple different ones in the comics, but either way, it's not like that matters. Like, her character is what ultimately matters, and she is great in this series. She kind of relates to Wanda through grief. She was one of the Snap people who came back unexpectedly. Unfortunately, her mother from Captain Marvel, who we saw, who's friends with Captain Marvel, passed away while she was gone, so that's obviously devastating. She connects with Wanda's grief through that way, and she's trying to reach her and trying to bring her back to reality. She's a really great character, really strong character, who I can't wait to see more of. That post-credit scene, I was expecting like she's gonna go into this theater and Sam Jackson's gonna be there, or Captain Marvel's gonna like come out of the shadows, and then just that lady turns into the Skrull, and I was like, oh yeah, that is a part of this, isn't it? The Skrulls are here. Dang, well, how come I wasn't thinking about that sooner, that any of these people could be green people, green aliens? But I'm excited to see what else she does in the MCU. I think she was a really strong addition here. Ultimately, I really enjoyed WandaVision. I think from start to finish, it was very entertaining, very fun. There are some jokes earlier on in the very much so reliant on sitcom style episodes where the joke's kind of like, okay, I kind of want to move on from this because I'm not particularly a big sitcom fan myself. And there's certain ways they edit that kind of, I wouldn't say irk me, but they just, like, after a while I kind of noticed, like, I wonder why they're editing it kind of like this. But it's really nothing like too like egregiously awful as far as editing goes, but overall I really enjoyed this show. I thought visually the visual effects look great, the action scenes are really fun. Agatha Harkness is a great villain. I hope she comes back more often now that she's kind of trapped by Wanda. Wanda, I can't wait to see what else she does as the Scarlet Witch since she's reading up and studying. I know she's gonna be in Doctor Strange too, maybe Spider-Man. I think that might have been just a rumor though. Don't know. Overall, for the first TV series in the MCU, I think they did a really fantastic job, and I can't wait to see what else they do with this new kind of storytelling format they have, because obviously this is a great start. Now let's see what else they can do with the TV format. I'm really excited for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I'm really excited for Loki too. I'm gonna give WandaVision an A-, despite those two things I mentioned, some of the jokes and some of the editing. I really did enjoy this show. Very good. I can't wait to see what else they do. This is definitely one of the top tier kind of Marvel projects, at least in my opinion, and I'm really excited for the potential that this has, the weirdness of future projects, what else Elizabeth Olsen can do as this character now that she has essentially been redefined through this show's narrative, which is obviously great. You know, I'm really excited. But if you've already seen WandaVision, which you probably had because this review's a couple of weeks late, whoops, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.